Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video I decided to try my hand at traditional painting, something that I don't do very often. I'm not particularly fluent in it and I would like to improve upon it. I'd like to take some of those skills and bring them into my tattoo art, such as portraiture, realism, or even just painterly styled tattoos. It's something that I've been working on a little bit more and more recently because I discovered gouache paints, which are super cool. They're reactivatable with water even after they're completely dry. They're opaque, so you can paint over things. Basically, what I'm saying is there's a lot of room for error, so I can improve things as I go. As that I'm pretty new at painting, I'm sure that I do all sorts of painting taboos while I'm working on this. Feel free to pick on me in the comments below, but at the same time, I would like constructive criticism. Give me tips and feedback of how to improve myself. Enjoy this time lapse of Pennywise, the dancing clown. Okay, let's first start by talking about the medium. I initially started out with a red Colorase pencil from Prismacolor. I enjoy using these because it's just, like I said, it's a nice loose sketch. You can darken things where you want the lines to go, and also I thought that this red tone would hide underneath the paints pretty nicely. It was pretty quick sketch as far as things go. This part of the whole thing took me about 10 minutes. I was actually watching it chapter 1, I believe, while I was working on this. It was just something I had going on in the background, and of course when you watch the first one you gotta watch the second one, so I ended up watching both of these while working on this. It actually took roughly the same amount of time as both movies. It's about 4.5 hours I think, in just doing the whole project all together. I used my normal top-down camera rig setup, which was working really well, especially because I had a new little mount attachment for it. I then switched over to using Liquitex's Acryl Gouache for that black background, and then moved on to my whole bean gouaches. They're the designer gouache series. Whole beans are awesome, and this is where I learned a very valuable lesson, and that is that nicer paints have just nicer results. They feel nicer to use, and similarly, nicer brushes kind of work that way. I switched between a couple different brushes. Some of them were just standard watercolor brushes, and my finer tip brush, which is a mid-series kind of artist brush. There's definitely a difference between lesser quality and higher quality ones, which is one of those sad realizations because it's much like playing nice guitars versus cheap guitars. It's like that, you almost feel like you're not good at something, and then you try out a much nicer version of it. If you learn how to play music on a Squier electric guitar initially, and you kind of lose that motivation, if you go to Guitar Center and you pick up a $2,000 version of that same guitar, go pick up an actual Stratocaster or something, it's amazing how much you notice that you're not as bad as you thought you were. Sometimes just the quality of the instrument makes a difference. Some of those starter ones aren't that great. So similarly, like I said, with painting, it's that same kind of thing. If you have nicer paints or you have nicer brushes, you're gonna notice the difference. It's not to say that you can't do anything with cheaper stuff. I feel like if you're not planning on making it something you're gonna do all the time, you probably shouldn't waste a lot of money on it. But I will say that I thoroughly enjoyed my whole bean gouache set over any of my other gouaches. I have Winsor Newton, and I also had I don't even remember the other brand name of it, but it was, with gouaches it seems to be completely different. I love how whole bean, how it dries, how it mixes. Everything about it was a lot more of a pleasurable experience than messing around with some of the cheaper brands. It also just feel like you can do more with them. I feel like your window of working it and overworking it is a much wider window, so you can play around with it and not worry about destroying things. So this is kind of what would have been a flattening stage, except I didn't do the whole thing, where I just kind of got roughly where the colors were going to go, because at this point, like I said, I'm still learning gouaches. I felt like just layering down some of the flat colors so that I could adjust and work over it, which you can overwork gouaches easily. If you put too much water on something, or too much paint, it gets muddy over time. So I knew that ahead of time going in with some of my other paintings, and I wanted to watch out for that as I went. But I also like watching the background here. You can actually watch some of the paint dry. When you use gouaches, lighter colors generally dry darker, and darker colors generally end up drying lighter than you think they are, which is important to note. And when you're painting on a solid black background like this, you can see exactly that, where I put on a color and it dried up a lot lighter. You have to kind of give it that time to dry so that you can actually see what the final outcome's looking like, so you don't go in and overwork something just because you think it's not exactly what you're looking for. I did usually the exact opposite of what I like to try to do in paintings, which is usually I try to avoid working on like eyes or faces because those are some of my favorite things to do, and I try to save them for the end so I get excited to finish the piece. And this one I focused mainly on that. And because of that, I didn't focus too much on the rest of the body and background. By the end of this, I feel like, I could definitely go in and improve the whole thing, but it was like I wanted the focal point to be on the face to begin with. So it didn't really hurt the piece altogether to kind of just find a point where I was like, yep, and this is done. I got what I wanted out of it. And I definitely got to that stage. So there's a ton more I could have done in this. I could have added a lot more details of the ripples and stuff, but I only have a color mixing set of a whole bean right now. So I had to actually like mix up all my colors, and going back into something and remixing to try to get the same colors didn't quite work out. So I'm actually glad that I did a lot of like that flatting initially in the background. Plus I didn't want this to look like it was just a photo of it. I like that feeling of it still being a painting. So I tried to keep some of that going along the way. At this point, I decided it would be nicer to have a border because I didn't really have a plan on. I didn't want to fill up the whole page, so just blacked out a border, added my white highlights at the end just to add those little bit of like, wet lips, glossy eyes, and just did some little tidies up. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please remember to hit like and subscribe for future content. Got an idea for what you'd like to see me do in future videos? Leave your suggestions in the comments below. You can also follow me on other platforms such as Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Remember to stay sane out there, and I'll see you in the next one.